What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Barrett, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a former head coach and a longtime assistant coach with an unbelievable work ethic. I mean, when I say unbelievable, has an unbelievable work ethic. He's a outstanding basketball mind, excellent talent evaluator, tremendous teacher, a professional, great communicator, a winner, and he's a Chicago, Illinois native, Nigel Thomas. Before I bring Nigel on, I'll talk about it a little bit. He graduated or played 4 years at Langston University, finished in 2003. After playing, he went right into coaching. So obviously that was a passion of his. And he's fortunate to start coaching right out of college. So from 2003 to 2008, he was at Prairie State College as an assistant. And then there he gets a chance to go back to his alma mater, where he spent the next 6 years. 3 as an assistant at Langston University, and then 3 as the head coach at Langston University. And then after those 3 years, he goes on to North Carolina Wesleyan as an assistant for 5 years. And then for the last 2 years, starting in 2019 to now, he's assistant coach at North Carolina Central University. I want to welcome to a show. This is the guy I kind of got to know during the pandemic. You listen to guys coaching. You hear about them in circles. I think he's one of the top assistants. It doesn't matter at what level in the country. I want to welcome to the show Nigel Thomas. How you doing, man?
LB, what's going on, man? Appreciate this. Appreciate the opportunity, man, to be on here. I feel privileged. I feel honored because I'm a big fan of your show and just love the guests that you have on and just love their transparency, love their honesty, and you unmask them. So I'm just happy to be here, man. Appreciate you.
I appreciate those words, man, and thank you again for coming on. Now, but let's get started. This is what we came here for, to get unmasked. First question I always ask, and it doesn't matter which level. I mean, you were fresh out of playing, and then you got fortunate to get a job, but it doesn't matter what level you started. There's no handbook to being a college coach. It's just not. Right. Tell me about your first day, first week, first month. After things are done, when with human resources and orientation, especially like no one gives you direction, and especially you, 22, 23, when you're starting. Yep. Tell me what was that like? Well, you can even talk about when you first got to, whether it's Langston or when you got to North Carolina Central.
Yep, no doubt. So I'm going to go back to 2003 when I first graduated from Langston University. I took a job actually as a PE and health teacher at a 1st through 8th grade elementary school back in my hometown of Park Forest, Illinois, which is the suburbs of Chicago. So that was going to be my job, but I knew my passion was coaching. So I was looking for an opportunity to get into it. So I had a previous experience or previous relationship with the athletic director at Prairie State College. His name was Bob Fairbank, longtime friend, but he kind of jump-started the program 2 years before I got there. But he gave me an opportunity just to get on almost as a volunteer assistant, made $300 stipend for the entire year. So August of 2003, my first day on the job, which is being introduced to the players, they thought I was coming in as a recruit. I mean, I'm 22 years old. They thought I was a player. And so when you're trying to, I guess, garnish the respect from guys, obviously I had some history and some playing experience that they knew about because I was from the area. But at that point, I'm trying to separate myself from being known as a player to now being a coach. I thought I was just going to be able to get in there and run them through some drills or something like that my first day on the job. And my first day on the job was to sweep the floor, get the uniforms out the wash, lower the baskets in the gymnasium, and basically set up the clock. And so basically I just need to be a fly on the wall. So for anybody trying to get into coaching, I know it looks glamorous, what you see on TV, and you think sideline, put on a suit and call out some plays and bring some guys to the side to motivate them. I was doing all the dirty work, and that goes from picking up the checks for meals. That was, driving the vans, pulling the vans up. You talking about Chicago in October, November. Those vans got to be warm because you're talking about 10 degrees, whatever. Those vans got to be warm for our players driving the game. So a lot of the dirty work, but things I never take for granted because it's those little jobs that always has I guess a servant mentality in your mind as a coach. So those first couple of years for me, I was just trying to just soak up as much knowledge as possible from the guys that I was working for. So, but just doing all the little jobs was equally important.
That's a great educational piece to the younger guys who, like you said, everyone thinks it's glamorous. You go in, and nowadays, man, everybody just want to jump in and think they're gonna make six figures right away. It doesn't work that way. I wish it was that way, but it just doesn't work out that way. You come in and you start from the bottom. You make your name known, and some guys get lucky, but that percentage is very small.
Exactly.
We talk about recruiting, man, because we all know that that's the lifeline of college athletics. Like, you have to get good players, you need to get good people,
right,
and you need to get a person who has good grades, and I'm gonna say a good student. And it's not always a student. I think a lot of people get that wrong. You just want kids that care about getting a degree, who care about going to class, who care about like being successful, and so those are the kids you want. And if you can get those three, and it's a tough combination, but if you get those three, you're gonna have, your kid's gonna be okay. You don't have to worry as much. Right. But talk about your best and worst recruiting stories over the years, and it could have been at any level.
Yep.
What pops in your head? And then I'm gonna throw this at you too, so you can answer that first part, best and worst or whatever. But or maybe one story, whether it's good or bad. I'm gonna give you the option with that one. Yep. That maybe when you were a head coach, assistant did, and you was like, whether it was great or terrible, like something in that era as well. Yep. As well.
Let me go best recruiting story. So I'm at North Carolina Wesleyan when this happened. So I work for, I always say this, I work for John Thompson. When I say John Thompson, I'm not talking about the black John Thompson. We make a joke all the time. It's the white John Thompson, slick back here at North Carolina Wesleyan, which is Division III in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. He gave me an opportunity, and we'll talk about this a little later, but he gave me an opportunity after being let go as a head coach to come to the Division III level. And so if anybody knows about Division III offers no athletic scholarship. So everything is based off of, academic performance and financial need. So having those pool of players and having to recruit maybe a list of 180 guys over the course of a year and just trying to establish those relationships. I was recruiting a young man who ended up being an all-conference performer for us, and 1,000-point scorer, great young man. But I went to go see him play, I don't know, maybe 11 times in his senior year. And his name is AJ Frye. And so AJ Frye went to Hoggard High School in Wilmington, North Carolina. And just, if anybody's seen AJ in high school, didn't really have the athletic body frame. You wouldn't walk in the gym and just pinpoint him and say, hey, that kid's going to be a player. But we knew he had the tools that could help us down the line and a tremendous work ethic. But AJ was looking for somebody and looking for a coaching staff that he could really connect with, because his father was tragically killed in New York as a kid. And so at 8 years old, so he really didn't have any father figures besides his coaches. Well, I went to go see AJ play at a church gym one day. He told me that he was going to be playing pickup. He said, Coach, I'm about to go hoop. I'll be hooping later on. So I'm just going to the church gym. We probably play there for about an hour. And so a 2.5 hour drive from Rocky Mount to Wilmington, I hop in the car just to go see him. That's how important he was to us. A week later, he committed, and he said that because we meant enough to him for me to just to come see him play at a church gym just on pickup, that meant a lot to him. And so we got the commitment. He ended up having a great career. And so that's probably the best story. If I wanted to go worst story, and I hate to categorize it as worst, but sometimes an assistant, you got to do some crazy things. And so I was at Langston University as an assistant. And so at this time, I'm 26 years old. Langston University is located in Oklahoma, NAIA program. and I ended up being an assistant for the head coach that I played for in college. So we needed a kid out of San Antonio. So the drive from Langston, Oklahoma to San Antonio is 8 hours. So I had to drive 8 hours to San Antonio to go see this kid play. Then I had to drive back the same night. And then I had to scout for the game the next day. So I took my wife with me. We had a 2-year-old at the time. And so anybody knows, taking your family on road trips while you're recruiting is probably some of the best quality time, because it's some of the time that you're only going to get. So my wife and I, 1-year-old daughter, drove to San Antonio, made that 16-hour round trip, saw the kid play, came back, still had to finish the scout. And we ended up getting the kid, but he only lasted a week on campus. So sometimes you do some things that, you just look back, but that's memorable for me. Because I had to change in a local park. I had to put my polo on before I walked to the gym. So it's memorable. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's all experiences that I don't forget. It's memorable for my wife. My 1-year-old is never going to remember it, but that's something we just look back on. So
that's deep, man. That's like you said, there's a lot of things that you do. People don't know why you do them, but to get a kid or not get a kid, I mean, there's a lot of things you have to do. Like, I'm listening to you, 16 hours round trip in a day. Wow, that's a lot. And people don't, and it happens. Like, it happens all the time.
Right.
And it's not one of those, things that, it doesn't, coaches, they respect the person when they can do that, but sometimes you got to do what you need to do.
Yes, sir.
You're named the head coach, at Langston. You're named the head coach at your alma mater, and I'm sure you're excited. You played there. Now you get coached as an assistant. Now you become the head coach. I know you're excited to have your own program. And this is all, within, by the time you graduated to, you're talking about a 12-year period. So you're roughly, 30 years old at that point. And what happens, and I don't know when you actually did take the job. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but what happens over the next few months? Now it's your program.
Right. So let me just go back a little bit. So I get the job as an assistant at my alma mater in 2008. So I get the job in July 2008. I was the assistant, like I said before, for the head coach that I played for. So anybody that, trying to go from, separating that relationship of being the player for your coach and then being his assistant, those are two different relationships. And it takes some time to mold. It takes some time to kind of get that respect going and that communication going. But we had a downward spiral when I took that job, because the first year I got there, we went from winning 8 games to winning 6 games. And then the last year for me being an assistant was the 2010-11 year. We won 2 games. We went 2-25. And so at the time, the athletic director, Patrick Simon, who's no longer the athletic director there, he kind of went on to Alcorn State and went to Allen University to be the athletic director. He called me in the office one day and said, and this was probably about a month before the season ended, and said, Nigel, you're a young guy, you're young in this profession, but I just want to help you. I want to help mentor you, guide you, but I'm going to make a change at the end of the year. I'm going to let you guys go. I just don't see the program going in the right direction. We probably need a change of leadership. And so in my mind, all I'm thinking is we're getting fired. And so at that point, I kind of had to change my thinking because, man, I got a wife, we got a child, I'm going to need a job. What's next? But he said, after he, made the change for my head coach and ourselves, he said, Nigel, what I want you to do is I want you to apply for the head coaching job once I open it up to the public. And so in my mind, I'm thinking like, there's no way I'm going to get this job. Like, why would anybody hire the assistant from the program that's kind of, made a downward spiral? That doesn't make any sense. But he says, well, this is going to be a good, learning experience for you, because you're going to have to present yourself. You're going to have to create a portfolio. You're going to have to come up with a vision and a plan on how you're going to lead this program. And regardless if you get it or not, this is probably an experience that you'll never, get again. If you do, it'll probably be down the line or whatever. So LB, I went through the whole interview process. You talk about 175 applicants that applied for that job when it opened up. And so I spent about 3 weeks trying to formulate a plan about how I was going to lead the program if I was given the opportunity. And so you're talking about just from the style of play to how I was going to handle academics, how I was going to handle any discipline issues, how I was going to handle player development, fundraising, scheduling, practice planning, all that. Any layer of a program that, you know, some people don't think that falls on the head coach's desk all the time. And so I came up with a binder. Matter of fact, let's see here. I think I have it right here. So this is the binder basically that I presented to the board of directors, the hiring committee, and it consisted of, 14 different people. And you talk about former players, you talk about dean of students, athletic director. So I ended up being one of the 4 finalists, and it was myself, 2 other former Division I head coaches, and a current Division I assistant. So I said, man, that's going to be tough for me to beat. But I presented myself well enough for them to offer me the position. And so in that plan, kind of laid out the first 30 days that you're talking about. Now, the unique thing about this situation is, since I was already on campus, had already coached these guys, I had those guys kind of advocate for me. Not that I asked them to, but they knew they were going through a coaching change. But those guys, because it was late, almost in the summer, it was August when I received the job. And so school was about to start. It wasn't going to be no team if they didn't have a coach. So those guys went into the AD's office and said, hey, Coach Simon, we want Coach Thomas to be our head coach. Not sure which direction you're going, but just having those guys kind of back me, it kind of helped with the transition.
That's big stuff right there. Like you said, like those guys advocating for you. I mean, a lot of times ADs do listen, and I'm glad that part worked out for you. So we'll get into some stuff later on about it.
Yep.
Scouting reports. So you said something about it a little bit earlier. Scouting reports, we know. I mean, those are huge. When you get into scouting reports, your job, you're watching 7-8 games, if not more. You have to do the best job of getting your team ready, getting that scout team ready, or getting your team ready to win a basketball game. You got to put them in the best position. You can't give them too much information, because we know, like, kids, man, they have so much stuff going on with the classes, the outside activities. So if you can't give them too much, because they'll tune you out. You just got to give them enough. And then you go back and forth, especially if you're the lead guy on the scout. You talk with the head coach. This is what you're thinking. You come up with the game plan. And I don't think people understand how much time is invested into these scouts. And like, you always had a coach, and I don't know how Coach Moden is. I don't know how he is. But it's kid is struggling. He's 2 for his last 30. Coach, he's struggling shooting the ball. What happens? As soon as you get in the game, the kid makes his first 2 shots. And
exactly.
I'm sure Coach Moden or whoever was looking at you like, you told me to do. And the players looking at you the same way. But and verbiage is huge too, because kids listen, coach listen. Talk about your best and worst, and I keep using worst, but talk about your best and worst scout reports you may have had over the years where you nailed it. Because sometimes you can have the perfect scout and the kids just don't play well, or you could have a bad scout, and I'm saying bad scout, but things you missed and play well. So talk about that, like your best and worst scout you thought about over the years that you've done.
Yep. So going back to my junior college experience, so I'm 23 years old. My junior college coach at the time, Mike Mandarino, who ended up taking over for Bob Fairbank, who initially gave me the job. He came in and gave me opportunity. He kept me on board at the junior college. He was really big on details, but my first scout he ever gave me, I had the information written down, gave all the players a paper scout. I had the sets written down on paper. And I remember going through the scout after practice one time with the team, trying to go over the sets of the opponent. And I brought the scout to the floor, the paper scout to the floor. So as I'm out there, I'm kind of, doing like this, trying to point guys into their different spots. And he kind of looked at me like, I know this is not his first scout. I'm not going to say anything, but what I learned from that experience is don't ever bring your scout to the floor. Okay. And so from every head coach that I've worked for, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I've worked for 5 different head coaches now. All 5 kind of present differently. But that one experience for me doing that, I kind of lost the respect from the team because they thought I didn't know what I was talking about, because if I'm having to read off the paper. So from that point on, and I think we ended up losing that, that scouting anyway. We were kind of bad that year, but he taught me from that point on, Nigel, just know your stuff backwards and forward. And so from that point on, and not like it's asked anymore, but you should never bring a scout to the floor. You should know all your information up here. When I was at Wesleyan, I did every scout for every opponent. And so from there, I think it trained me at that point. I just got to be on top of it. And so I would say my best scout, I think, was when I was at NC Wesleyan, and John Thompson, the head coach, was going for his 300th career victory, and it was against Guilford College. It was a school that he used to be an assistant for. It was at home. He really wanted to get it. His mom was present at the game. She was older in age, so it was kind of, hard for her to get around. So he really wanted to win it, but I knew I had to nail this one. And we ended up winning, and they were a top 25 program at the time. But, from that point on, LB, just preparation, having knowledge of who you're playing against, not giving your guys too much information, but just enough that they can use, but being able to call out actions, as stuff is going on from the bench, knowing the opponent's stuff better than they do. That's kind of intimidating. I mean, that kind of, opponents are looking at me looking like, dang, how does he know that? So just being prepared. But yeah, that's just another facet of coaching that I think a lot of people who are not engulfed in the game, they don't see that part. They don't see the late night, film work, breaking down film. They don't see, trying to get every OB, every sideline OB, knowing all that type of stuff and preparing your guys for battle. So those are probably my best and worst experiences.
Awesome. And you're right about that. Because you know what? I've had people or friends that say, who is that guy that keeps standing up and yelling all the time? They have no idea. Like, no, that's the scout. So if you figured it out, then you would know that a lot of times, a little bit more passionate. But I know I'm starting to see more coaches kind of change the way they do scouts, and they're including everyone into the scout now to make sure everyone is engaged the whole time. So, but no, like you said, scouting is a huge part of it. I don't think people realize how much. Like one of my friends, he saw me do a whole scout. He was at my house for a few days, and he didn't realize. He said, "Hey, you watched that much film?" I was like, yeah, I watched that much film. He said, "You stay up this late?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. Like, I don't sleep a lot during the season." And they were just shocked to see that because they didn't realize how much goes into it.
Yep. You know what? And my friends say that all the time. Like, what do you do all day? Like, see, people don't see the unseen hours until your friend probably came and hung out with you. Now that they get to see behind the backstage work, it gives you a different respect for people that do this. So that's an excellent point, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's the biggest challenge you've experienced since you've been a college coach? And you kind of mentioned it. I don't know if this is gonna be it, but you were let go at your alma mater. I don't know if that was a challenge, what was your biggest challenge though?
Yeah. You know what? I think my biggest challenge, LB, is not even basketball related. I think it's family balance, work-life balance. I think that's the biggest challenge. I'm blessed beyond measure to have a woman in my life who I've known since I was 11 years old. So she's kind of known my passion. She's known what I want to do, and she's been through this entire journey with me during this time. But we have 3 children. So we got 3 daughters. My oldest daughter, who's 12, has been to 5 different schools in 7 years. And so when people talk about coaching and a challenge, college basketball period will take you from place to place, and you got to have somebody in your corner who's going to support you, love you unconditionally. And then my wife has to explain to our kids why daddy's gone late nights, why I'm gone before they wake up in the morning. Why can't dad drop me off at work? Why can't dad be at this talent show? Well, dad's out on the road recruiting, or dad has to stay at home because he has to, work on a scout. But what I've learned over the years is to work for good people who also have this same mindset about family. And I'm blessed beyond measure to work here with Coach Moten, who has 2 children himself, and he understands the importance of family. He understands what it means for family to be around, to have children at the office, to have your wives be around, to integrate all of that. And so I just think work-life balance, being present, because there was a time, early in my career where I was being present at home, but I wasn't really present. I was there at home and my daughter's trying to get my attention, pulling my leg to look at something. I got the computer on my lap over here. Well, if I'm not giving her that attention, somebody else will. And I definitely don't want to, get that ingrained in her mind early on. So what I try to do is, if I'm going home, if I'm on a recruiting call, I'd rather just do the recruiting call in the car and just be done with that before I walk in the house. Once I get home, I try to spend as much time with them. And then if I got to stay up late to work on a scout, then I got to wait till they go to bed. Then I got to give my wife her time. I got to always, try to carve out date nights and stuff like that, just to make sure that I'm handling the business on the home front, because at the end of the day, she's going to be the one to help me and kind of defend me when I'm not there. So I think that's been the biggest challenge. And so I think that's the non-professional part, but I think that's probably the most important part is family.
Yes, it is. You're 100% right. I totally agree with you. Do you ever find that there are things about you that people might misunderstand? What are
they? I think sometimes I can come off, laid back and passive. I think that's just my nature. I don't have I'm not an introvert, but I don't have an outgoing and just command the room type of personality when I walk into it. So some people probably think, well, dang, how does he making it on, the college floor? Well, the thing about it, I know how to separate myself and I know when to turn it on. And so I turn it on when we get in between those lines on the floor, and I turn it on when that ball goes up, or I turn it on when it's time to get in the film room. I turn it on when it's time for individual workouts. But in the office, I'm pretty chill. I'm pretty laid back, and but I think there's got to be a balance in that too. What I try not to do is try to take any emotion from that floor and carry it to the office, because if guys want to come in here and talk to you, one thing I learned from my head coach that I work for, my former head coach as a player, is it's very intimidating when a player comes into your office and that desk is sitting right there. So they're on one side of the desk and you're on the other. Sometimes that kind of creates a barrier, and they're afraid to open up to you as a player to coach. So what I've kind of learned over the years is kind of try to meet guys and talk to guys in their element. And the element that the guys love is in the gym. So I think working out guys, being in the gym with them, they'll tell you any and everything about what's going on. One thing Coach Moten did when I first got the job here was saying that he has a rule where he wants the assistants to, we all have our position groups. So, when BG was here, he had the point guards, I had the wings, and Reggie Sharp had the post players. Well, you have to take out one of your position guys to lunch once a week. And then when you take them out, it can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be at Ruth Chris or anything like that, but just, go somewhere and grab something to eat. But the rule is you can take them out to lunch, but you have to talk about everything except for basketball unless they bring it up. And so that's kind of helped with the relationships. But to meet guys and to walk guys to class, they'll tell you everything. Just sitting out in the gym, they'll tell you everything. But it's something about the office. When players come in the office, they think immediately they're in trouble. So I try not to do that at all. And so I think it's all about relationships though, LB. I mean, you got to connect with guys. You got to let guys know that you care. beyond the basketball floor, and it's spending time. And as coaches, you've been in this long enough. We probably spend more time with other people's kids than we do our own kids. And so, but that's a sacrifice. This job is not a 9 to 5. It's a 24/7, 365, and you always on call. So that when you sign up for it. Sometimes you don't know it until you sign up, and some guys get out of it. So, but it's all about relationships, LB.
You hit it 100%. Everything you were saying is so true. And even the desk, because I always used to say, kids, when they came over to the office, they always felt like they were going to the principal office. And you talked about it, it's like they think they're in the principal office and they know they're in trouble, right, but they really haven't even done anything. But that's just the mentality they have. So I totally agree with you on that. They don't want to say anything, especially a lot of times they're going to say stuff to you that they won't say to the head coach. They feel like you may go back and tell the head coach because you're in the office. Exactly. But once you're outside of it, they tell you everything they want to. They'll tell you anything.
And that's one thing. And that's one thing I probably learned as a head coach. When I was a head coach, that's what I missed. Because even when I flipped over from being an assistant, even though I still coach those guys as an assistant, they were afraid to come to my office. It's something about a head coach they're just not going to tell. So, hiring a great staff is always important. Guys who are going to hold your back and preach the same message you're going to have, but make sure that, I honestly think that a head coach doesn't have to know everything. You can put out little brush fires for the head coach, but he has to know when a forest fire is coming. And yes, so, it has to be a balance, but that's what I missed as a head coach. I miss guys coming into the office. Now I'm relying on my assistant to kind of tell me all the little problems with the girls and, what they're struggling in, guys don't have any money or, they failed a class. Well, you got to have a great staff around you that's going to help you, give you that type of information.
So true. So true.
Yep.
What do you, we're all educators in this business. Like you talked about, you were physical education teacher. It's right. The same thing with coaching, but we always say to the kids, like the basketball court is your classroom. It's still learning, but it's the same thing off the court.
Right.
I asked you that question is, what do you try to teach or educate? And it could be, what's lined up with Coach Moulton as well. But what do you try to teach or educate your players besides basketball?
Just being good people, man. Just being good people. Just, we all make mistakes. We've all been, 20 years old. So we're going to make mistakes. But I think it's all about ownership. I think it's all about, I think the best way to connect with this generation is to be as open and transparent with these kids as possible. Let them know that you were doing the same stuff. I think sometimes, us as coaches or adults, period, try to give this persona like, we haven't done any of this stuff. That's why I try to tell my kids all the time, you're not going to fool me. Been there, done that, tried that before. So just being responsible, just being high character, taking ownership for their responsibilities, owning up to mistakes, and just being willing learners. And so, talking to these guys all the time, they all come from different backgrounds. They all come from different situations at home, but we've all been there. So just try to relate any experience that I've been through to kind of help them get through experiences. Awesome.
I love that. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna ask you this. What was that first practice like? Because you did all the preparation. You say you started, late in August, but what was that first practice like? And the first game when you finally in control of your program, back in 2011. Like, what was that first? Because now you were assistant and you would play for him, but now it's your program and like everybody wants to try to do everything. But like, what was your first practice like? And then what was that first game like?
First practice was too damn long. I think, if I'm 30 years old and you have people kind of doubting why they hired you, and you got people kind of on your back and questioning you all the time, I think you try to do too much. And I think that's one thing that I got out of myself as a head coach, where I was trying to spend too much time trying to prove to others that I was the right man for the job. And when you do that, you kind of get away from being who you are. And instead of being who you are, I tried to be Coach K. I tried to be Izzo. I tried to be John Chaney. I tried to do the 5 a.m. practice, try to, establish some discipline. So I think my first practice, I still got the practice plan. LB, I think we were probably in there for close to 3 hours. And you know what I mean? And that I was trying to put everything in: shell, fast break, half court, continuity offense. I tried to put in a sideline OB, just trying to do everything when I was just doing too doggone much. And so trying to overcoach guys I should have just let play. That first game was against Sterling College in Kansas. And Dean Jaderston was their head coach at the time, a guy that, I kind of respect, but we ended up losing by 10, but shoot, it's almost like playing. You're nervous leading up to it, but once that ball goes up, LB, you kind of just get engulfed in the game itself. You're a competitor, but LB, I tried to coach every possession. And when you try to coach every possession, you're making your guys hesitant. You're more nervous than they are. You're just trying to do everything perfect. So I think one thing I've learned from that experience is just be myself, man. Instead of trying to be everybody else, just be myself. So good experience, something I'll never, trade, but obviously, I still remember it like it was yesterday. But I talked to most all my guys that I had from that first year, and I apologize to them all the time about, I wish I was a better coach for them, but they trusted me enough. They loved me. I love them. But I was definitely young, and I learned from it. It's all a learning experience.
That's what it is. It's a learning experience.
Yep.
I'm gonna ask you this: what is the strangest thing or weirdest thing a player has done outside of the basketball court? Because you like you just said, you got some kids who like you were 20 before, so it's like you do some stuff that you like, and so you'll be like, man, I did that, but then you see some of them do some stuff, and you don't have to name names, but like something just like, wow, I can't believe this.
Great question. So, man, this was late February of 2000. I'm not gonna give any dates because I don't want people trying to piece it together. I'm a head coach, and LB, when you're a coach and you get a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's never good, right? Never good. So I had a player who thought that it was a good idea to try to go to Walmart and walk out of there with a 50-inch TV. And so this was 1 o'clock in the morning. We were scheduled to leave and get on the bus to go travel down to Texas for a game. And I had to go and bail this kid out. And I had to go and I had to call his parents, which is never a good thing. But because great kid, never did anything, just not, we all make mistakes. Not sure what was on his mind at the time. But we're trying to play for a place in the conference tournament. So was a really good player. I talked over with the AD. I was on the phone with the AD the whole bus ride down to Texas. My wife actually went and got him out, but my wife is the one that really got him down to Texas so he could play the game. And he wasn't really he didn't think he was going to play, but he wanted to be with his team. The AD said he could come down there, put him in, coach, if you want to. But he ended up coming down there and actually scored 3 big buckets for us in overtime, but was very apologetic, knew he made a big mistake. But like I said, isolated incident, wasn't a bad kid at all, just not sure what he was thinking. So that was probably the weirdest thing, having to deal with that. So.
Yeah, that's a strange one. Yeah. Walking out. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Biggest accomplishment you've experienced since you've been in college coaching?
Biggest accomplishment. Wow, biggest accomplishment. I don't think it's one isolated incident or seeing the guys who come in as freshmen and graduate. There was a senior class, actually my last year at NC Wesleyan. I recruited all 6 guys as freshmen to come in 4 years prior. but just seeing them walk across that stage and they all stay together. Nowadays, you get guys that transfer, you get guys who just don't make it, but the 6 guys that came in that senior class all walked across the stage in 4 years. All had different levels of their career, all did different things on the floor, but the fact that they all graduated, and I was present that day, and that was the last class that I had before I took the job here at Central. I think that was probably the greatest accomplishment, just to see that class stay together for 4 years and walk across the stage, and for me to be there. So that was a good one.
That's a wonderful accomplishment, because a lot of people get caught up on the wins, when, like, you could easily say going to the tournament, like winning, and
right.
But like and guys they do get caught up on them. But I think that is when you got a kid that comes in, or kids that come in, and you see them grow from young boy to man, because that's what parents trust you. Yeah. Like, and when I recruited kids, I would always say, you've done a great job of rearing your kids for 18 years. Yep. Now you got to trust us,
right,
for the next 4 years, for them going from a young man, from a boy,
right,
to a man. Because these are the 4 most important years that they're gonna have. This is what they're learning, what it's like, how to deal with adversity, and being a grown man. And so right. I thought that's huge, and that's why it's always been a thing of playing a huge part in kids from 18 to 22, or 17 to 23, and sometimes it could be 24, but playing right. a huge part in those guys' lives, just to see them grow into the men that they are and what they're going to become. So that's
Absolutely.
huge.
Absolutely.
What movie, because this is an entertainment one, what movie or TV show title best describes your week?
Oh, dang. Wow.
I'm sure yours is busier than ever now with
yeah. That's a good one, LB. I would say, because I'm a Spike Lee fan, I would say Do the Right Thing. And only because I will say that because, it's always tough to do the right thing. I mean, it's tough because it's a lot of, we all make decisions in life. And I'm always trying to make sure I'm doing the right thing for my family, trying to do the right thing for this program, for these kids, for myself, health-wise, taking care of myself. So, eating right, spending enough time with my family, identifying, evaluating the right recruits, spending enough time with our current players. So I would say do the right thing, because, every day there's decisions, every minute there's decisions that be made from the moment you wake up in the morning until you lay your head down at night. We're always making decisions, and we're trying to do the right thing. So I would say do the right thing, Spike Lee.
I love that answer. I love it. And you're 100% right. What's what's your favorite word or phrase that you like to use?
It goes back to when I was let go at Langston as a head coach after 3 years. And when I say I was let go, my contract wasn't renewed. So new AD came in, he kind of gave me a year, but when there's a change in administration, if you're just not off the charts winning national championships, they're eventually going to try to bring their own people in. And so no ill will, no ill feelings. He gave me a year to get it done, even though I had won more games each year, but hey, it's all good. But the one thing that my mother, and I'm 40 years old, and so my mother's 72, and what she told me that next day after I was let go on April 1st, 2014. I was about to head down to Dallas for the Final Four. The Final Four was in Dallas that year. And she told me, she said, Nigel, she said, the best is yet to come, even if the worst has already happened. The best is yet to come, even if the worst has already happened. And so I live by that phrase every day, because, we're all hit with adverse situations. We're all hit with roadblocks. We're all hit with something, disappointments, setbacks, whatever. But it's all about perspective. It's all about how we're going to, learn from it and grow from it. Are we going to make excuses? Are we going to find a way? So when she told me that stuck with me to this day. So the best is yet to come, even if the worst has already happened. So I think that's always just been my positive mind frame and mindset when I approach anything where I feel like, dang, that was how I'm gonna recover from that. I just remind myself of that phrase. I tell players that, I tell my kids that, I tell my wife that, and I have to constantly remind myself of the same thing. So I'm gonna go with that phrase, LB.
I'm telling moms. I mean, I'm still in that, so I'm still in that. I actually like that.
Yes, sir.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? I know that's a phrase, but what's the best piece of advice?
Best piece of advice is after I was let go at Langston, and then I took the job at NC Wesleyan. My wife told me going into that situation, because she could see how my demeanor had changed as a head coach, where I was just trying to, be other coaches. I was trying to be Shaka Smart. I was trying to be all these other guys. Best piece of advice is just be yourself. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to accept you for who you are, but you got to stay true to yourself. And it kind of goes to what Carmelo said when he just got the scoring, when he got number 10. And when we're recording this, I think Melo did it yesterday. He's 10th all time. But what he said in the locker room was he stayed true to himself, even through this whole process. So just be me, just, stay true to myself. So it's nothing profound, but just stay true to yourself, be who you are, and let that be the best you can be. So be the best version of you that you could possibly be.
I love it. I'm going. That sounds like great advice.
Yes, sir.
You're not a self-promoting guy. I know that for sure. So if you had to choose 3 adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
Loyal, energetic, continuous learner. And I know that's not really adjective, but I would say loyal, energetic, continuous learner.
I'll go with. I'll take continuous learner. I like that. I think it's everything evolves. You have to keep learning in this business. If you're not, guy always told me is either in a routine or a rut team. If you're not continuing to learn it, you're gonna be in a rut. So I totally agree with you. What person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
The person that's had the most influence on my life is, I would say, my mother. Single parent growing up. My father was in my life, but mother and father divorced when I was 6 years old. My mother is an ordained minister, so I kind of grew up in the church. She worked multiple jobs. We didn't struggle, but she wouldn't, even if we did, she would never expose me to that, because I had everything that I possibly wanted or asked for without being spoiled. But she's the one that got me into, all these park leagues growing up. She got me into basketball camp. She just found ways for me to be around the game and around good people. Still gives me advice to this day. I'm her only child, so I'm like her baby. She lives in Indianapolis now, but she from day one, has loved me unconditionally. The event is probably April 1st, 2014, when I was let go at Langston, only because I learned so much about myself. And LB, when I tell you, you really find out who really supports you and who's really behind you. There were about 60 people at this little gathering when I got the job at Langston as a head coach. 60. When I lost the job and I had a little gathering to go away, and I was moving here to North Carolina, it was 3 people there. So people are there with you when you're on the up. And then you got the people who kind of just disappear when things are down, but then will reappear when things are up again. And so that kind of taught me a lot about having a close-knit circle. You know, people talk about friends and stuff like that, but you got colleagues, you got friends, you got, you know, associates, but you really find when things are down, you really find out who's in your corner. So those were, that was probably the most profound event for me in my life.
Wow, good stuff. I mean, I like that. I mean, like you said, you learned from that experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask you this. I'm gonna just ask it because I think it's important because you sound like you're a true student of the game, and I'm sure you're there. You know, with Lavelle now, and John McClendon name is always posted, and you hear about all these all-time great coaches. But if you had a chance to sit down
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 hours, lunch or dinner, pick someone's brain to see what made them successful, what things they went through, what they had to deal with. And I'm gonna use coaches for this. Who would be 3 or 4 guys that you would just want to sit down? It could be past or present, and you just want to pick their brain and say, "Hey, man, tell me about you. Like, what I want to know how can I be successful in this business, and what things should I look for and not look for?"
Right. Just because I'm in the building now that he's named after John McClendon would definitely be number one. Just what he went through during that time, how he overcame the adversity, and what he implemented to the game. Just want to see what his process was and how he was able to kind of just block out the noise in a sense, but stay locked in on the goal. So John McClendon would be one. John Chaney would be number two. Actually had a chance to meet Coach Chaney when we practiced at Temple back in 2014, but only spent a few minutes with him. I wish it was more time because even that small amount of time, I was able to gain some knowledge. John Thompson would be another one. Big John Thompson, Georgetown. John Wooden would be 4. And number 5, I would say Dean Smith. So that's probably my 5. So McClendon, Thompson, Chaney, Dean Smith, and who was the 5th? McClendon, John Thompson, John Chaney, Dean Smith,
John Wooden.
John Wooden. There you go. Yep, that's my 5.
That's a great list right there. That's a great list. And I was fortunate. This is interesting because I remember when Coach McClendon was around. Coach Bobby Vaughn, who's at Elizabeth City, they all coached around the same time. They were good friends. So at the Final Four, I would be around Coach Vaughn, who was a mentor of mine when I played at Elizabeth City. Him and Coach McClendon were good friends and big house games. So I was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was like legendary guys. Coach Vaughn is in the North Carolina Hall of Fame, building named after him at Elizabeth City as well. So it's like to sit around and listen to those guys tell stories, because those were John Thompson guys before John Thompson. So that was just an amazing thing to hear those guys talk. So I know what you're saying about that.
And if I had to say 6 and 7, I'll put Big House Games and I'll put George Raveling 6 and 7.
George Raveling's
my bad.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
When you get another shot, because I think you're gonna get a chance to be another head coach. I think that much of you. And are there any changes you would make? Like from the type of staff. It is all gonna depend on where you go. Like, because it's you're probably not going to hire the same type of guys. So you were at a different, you're at a different level then. But when you look at it from a staff standpoint, because I'm sure you think about that. Hey, you're going to be a head coach? I think so. Style of play, games evolving, type of players from your last program to a new program. Like, what would those be? Like, what ideas would you have in your head right now?
Yeah. So, I think that the caliber of players that I like you said, I think it all depends on what level I would be at and where I would be. But the players that I had at Langston were good enough to win. I just wasn't good enough for them. And so I think I would have to, I would be a little bit more not so hands-on and allow them to play more free. You know, you talk about recruiting guys and they want to play up and down, they want to get up and down. You got to be able to trust, and you got to be able to trust guys to make the right decisions. And, you know, but I want to recruit high-level guys. I want to recruit, you know, guys that just want to compete. You know, I want to get guys who want to compete, but I want to hire a staff of guys that want to compete. And I want guys who are smarter than me. And I want guys who, you know, have a voice and who are just diverse. I would never say I just want to, you know, hire a recruiter, hire a guy who's just good with player development. I think one thing that I didn't do as a head coach was, and I was young, so I'm not thinking about that. But as a head coach, you're trying to develop players, but you got to develop your staff as well. And so I want to get guys who want to be future head coaches. And therefore, I think that's going to make me better, because now I have to be a little bit more better at delegating responsibilities and allowing them to do what they want to do. But like I said before, the caliber of players that I had at Langston were good enough. I would just have to trust more. I would want to spend more time with them off the floor more. But you know, I think I'm just better now. I think I'm a better communicator. I think, you know, I believe in myself more. I have more confidence now. And I've been around head coaches, and that goes from, you know, John Thompson at Wesleyan to right here to Coach Moten. I'm under guys who run like Fortune 500 companies. Like, I'm able to see them delegate responsibility and hire people that they trust to get the job done. And I think that's probably the most important thing. But how you oversee a program, but you got to have people in place that, you know, who are going to handle the little jobs so you can take care of the bigger picture. And that's to recruit high level players and to coach basketball. So your staff is important, but getting, you know, players in here is equally important.
Terrific answer on with all of that. I always like to ask this question last. You kind of said something about it from a head coaching standpoint, but I'm going to talk about even before then. Mm-hmm. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self, to prepare for, you know, just as an assistant before building up to that head coach? I'm just thinking about the assistant because, like you said, you came in at 22 and you were, you know, you were just coming fresh off the court. So everybody still think they're a player. They don't really see it as a coach. But what would you tell your younger self?
Surround yourself with people who are going to help prepare you for your ultimate goal. Kevin Eastman says this all the time, but big ears, big eyes, small mouth, which means listen more, watch more, observe more, and close your mouth and not talk so much. Continue to learn the game, study the game, you know, get better at it. Really talk to people who've done it like yourself and really pick their brains and learn from them. But just immerse yourself into the craft. And it's not just all X's and O's. There's so many other things. But, you know, reach out to people. And I think, LB, that's one thing about on the men's side where we've kind of evolved, especially during this pandemic, is we've kind of leaned on each other on the men's side and reached out to one another. These Zoom calls have been off the charts when normally, you know, we reach out to, you know, other coaches throughout the year just to check on guys, but it's really to talk, hey, do you know this player? Or, hey, help me with this scout for this opponent. The pandemic was so good because you're on a Zoom call with so many high-level coaches and people are really just being honest and talking about their journey and their path and, you know, how they got there and really sharing ideas. And it's really helped with relationships. And I wish we can continue to do that. But we didn't have this back in the day. And so now at the Final Four, it's probably the only times you really got a chance to really sit down and really talk to guys. Well, this whole year and a half during this pandemic has been my Final Four. And, you know, and really clinics, you know, Zoom calls, all that type of stuff. So I'm really trying to learn from this and learn from, you know, from guys who've done it. So I would say, listen more, be more of a student all around the board.
No, that's so true about all your answers. And it's interesting you say that because a lot of the guys that I talk to, and a lot of the guys I've been associated with in this business that I've been probably closer to are the younger guys, like closer to your age, because when I came into this business in the early 2000s, and we started at the same time. No, you finished in 03. So I got into college later. I was, I was 32 when I first got in, whereas you were 22.
Right.
But at the time, I thought it was, and this is where the money started changing. Late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of the guys came in and they had a different title then. They weren't, the third guy wasn't going out on the road. It was only two assistants and a head coach. And they weren't volunteer assistants, but they had a attachment to them as a administrative guy. Right. So, and the money wasn't as big. And as soon as the money started getting big, those guys who were a little bit older than me, 55, 60, they had been in since the early 90s, late 80s. They weren't reaching out to us younger guys as much. I told myself I wasn't going to let that happen. I was going to bring, I wanted to tell the young guys how my experience was. Because no one, like I said, no one tells you what to do. What should you do? So my thing was like, I'm not letting these younger guys behind me go through what I went through. And so that's why it's interesting now how I don't know how I've gotten a group of like 20 guys that I'm mentoring through the business, just because I want to see them like the same way I learned. I want them to give back to someone else as well. Like I want that to happen. So, and then this became, like, hey, I want these stories to get out of these assistant coaches. And that was one of the reasons Unmasked came about, like you said, through the Zooms and all of that. So that's how it kind of started. But like you said, you're 40. You got in at a young age, but not too many guys like pull you to the side and say, "This is how it is, young fella. This is how you dress. This is how you act on the road." That didn't happen. So I wish I would have gotten that early.
And about the dress, I didn't mean to cut you off about the dressing thing. My first day on the job at Langston as an assistant for my head coach. So I made the move from Chicago to Oklahoma, made the 14-hour drive. I had a 95 Toyota Camry, pulled up, went into faculty housing, dropped my stuff off, but was trying to meet my head coach in the office. And so when you're at the JUCO level, you kind of dress any way you want to. You get in to come in sweats, you kind of come and go as you please. My head coach was the ultimate professional. So I walked in, I had on sweats, eager, jumping there. Hey, coach, I just made this 14-hour drive. I'm here. And so he looked me up and down and he said, "Who are you?" So I'm thinking like, it's a joke. I said, "Coach, what's up? I'm here." He said, "When we're in the office, we don't dress like that." He said, so I had to go back, polo. Matter of fact, it was a button up, no polo. So I had to wear a button up, slacks, hard bottom shoes. That's how he was every day in the office. How we went through individual workouts. Yeah, obviously going to court, sweats and everything. But anytime we were in the office, it was always button up, always slacks. Even if we had to go across campus to the registrar's office, if we had to go to financial aid to check on the kid, you always walked across campus, slacks, button up, tucked in, a tie if need be, but that was every day. So that was kind of my first introduction to being a professional. And so that's something I it sticks with me all the time. Those are little lessons you learn. And I'm thinking like, hey, it's all just about the hoop side, but it's a whole nother side to it. Whole nother side.
Yes, it is, man. Well, look, I want to thank you again, man. Nigel, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Is there anything you want to leave with the viewers? I thought you were awesome. Authentic stuff, and it's more educational, and I hope a lot of young people learn. But is there anything that you want to leave with the viewers before we go?
You know what? Just continue to share the game, continue to grow the game, continue to, really pour into the young people that you're coaching. One thing that I was taught to me early on is whatever situation you're in, and if you're transitioning from that situation to another one, leave the program in a better place than when you got there. That's the type of mindset you got to have every day. Like if today was your last day on this job, is it in a better place now than it was when you first got it. So LB, I appreciate the opportunity, man, what you're doing, for this and for young coaches, mentoring them and guiding them and getting these type of coaches on here, man. This is off the charts, man. So if I can ever help you, let me know.
Well, man, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. And like I said, I'm happy to get you on. So, and you leaving with great information. That's more outstanding. So I want to thank you viewers for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guest as we get them unmasked. See you next time and stay safe.